In the arms of her private security, a secret love in the mountain house, lesbian passion. It started as an assignment, a role I had performed countless times before. I was her private security, the one tasked with watching the doors, guarding the shadows, and keeping her safe from a world that never stopped demanding pieces of her. But the mountain house was different. Far from the noise of the city, hidden among trees and silence, it became more than a safe haven. It became a place where our walls slowly began to crumble. Days stretched into nights where only the crackle of the fireplace broke the quiet. We shared the same space, the same air, and though our conversations began with small details, work, news, the isolation, they deepened with every passing hour. I noticed the way her laughter softened when she let herself relax, the way her eyes lingered when she thought I wasn't looking, the vulnerability she carried beneath the surface of her strength. I told myself it was dangerous to feel this way, that crossing that line meant risking everything. My career, her reputation, the fragile safety we had built. Yet the mountain house held its own kind of gravity, pulling us closer with every moment we spent together. And what began as duty turned into something far more dangerous, desire. This story is about the secret love that bloomed where no one was watching, about the nights when silence held more meaning than words, and about the passion that neither of us could keep hidden forever. Stay until the end, because each chapter will take you deeper into the tension, the stolen glances, and the choices that defined us. And if you believe in stories of forbidden love and courage to follow the heart, subscribe now, like this video, and turn on notifications, because what happened in that mountain house will leave you breathless. When I first drove up the winding mountain road, the house appeared like a secret etched into the hillside, its tall windows reflecting the fading sun. It was large but not ostentatious, built of stone and dark timber, a place meant for retreat and silence. My job was simple on paper: provide security, ensure privacy, and keep her safe while she spent the season away from the city. Yet the moment I stepped inside, I felt something stir in me, something that had nothing to do with duty. Her name was Alexandra Hayes. To the public, she was a respected philanthropist, a woman who moved through boardrooms and social events with ease. But here, in the solitude of the mountains, she was stripped of all that. She greeted me at the door in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back, her face bare of makeup. And even like that, especially like that, she was striking. "Thank you for being here," she said, her voice calm but edged with fatigue. "I know this isn't the usual assignment." "No assignment is ever usual," I replied, setting down my bag. "That's why I'm here." She gave a faint smile, the kind that revealed little but hinted at more. Then she turned, leading me through the wide halls of the house. The smell of pine lingered in the air, mixed with the faint smoke of a fireplace. The first days passed in a quiet rhythm. I walked the perimeter, checked the locks, memorized every angle of the property. She kept to her study or spent hours reading by the fire. We crossed paths often, always exchanging polite words, but I told myself to keep a careful distance. She was my client, nothing more. And yet, I found myself noticing her in ways I shouldn't. The way she tucked her legs beneath her on the couch when she read. The way she hummed softly when making tea in the kitchen. The way her eyes softened in the rare moments she laughed. It wasn't sudden, it was gradual, like a slow fire building heat beneath the surface. One evening, a storm rolled in. The wind rattled the windows, and the rain pounded against the glass in heavy sheets. The mountain roads had been declared unsafe, and the house felt even more isolated than usual. I was in the living room, scanning through security footage on my tablet, when Alexandra entered with a blanket draped over her shoulders. "Looks like we're cut off for the night," she said, glancing at the storm outside. "Safer here than anywhere else," I replied, though my voice was softer than I intended. She sat on the opposite end of the couch, tucking the blanket tighter. For a while, we both listened to the storm, the crackle of the fireplace filling the silence between us. Then she turned to me, her eyes thoughtful. "Do you ever get tired of it?" she asked. "Tired of what?" "Always protecting other people. Always putting yourself second." The question caught me off guard. Most clients never asked me about myself, they were content to let me be a shadow. But her eyes held genuine curiosity, And for the first time, I felt compelled to answer honestly. Sometimes, I admitted, but it's easier to protect others than to figure out what I need for myself. She studied me for a long moment, her gaze steady, unflinching. Then she said quietly, "I know what you mean." The conversation shifted then, slowly unraveling into pieces of ourselves we hadn't meant to share. She spoke about the pressures of her life in the city, the constant scrutiny, the loneliness that came with always being watched. I told her bits of my past, how I had chosen this work because it gave me purpose, even if it kept me at a distance from normal life. By the time the storm eased, something between us had shifted. We weren't just a client and her security anymore. We were two people sitting in the quiet of a mountain house, admitting truths neither of us usually spoke aloud. The days that followed carried that same undercurrent. I began to look forward to the moments when our paths crossed, to the quiet meals shared at the kitchen table, to the evenings when she would sit by the fire and I would find excuses to linger nearby. The attraction was undeniable now, pressing at the edges of every conversation, every glance. But with it came fear. I knew the line I was not supposed to cross, the boundary that kept me professional and her safe. And yet, each day, that line blurred further. The moment that tipped me came unexpectedly. I was in the hallway, adjusting the security panel, when Alexandra approached. She leaned against the wall, watching me with a faint smile. "You take this so seriously," she said. "It's my job," I replied, not looking up. "Yes," she said softly. "But sometimes I wonder if that's the only thing you let yourself be." I froze, her words cutting deeper than she knew. When I turned to face her, she was closer than I expected. Her eyes searched mine, filled with something unspoken, something that made my chest tighten. I wanted to say something, to break the tension, but before I could, the lights flickered. A sharp crack echoed outside, and the house went dark. The power outage left us standing in the dim glow of the emergency lights. Alexandra's breath caught, and for a moment, we were frozen in the silence. Then, instinctively, she reached for my arm. Her touch was light, tentative, but it sent a current rushing through me. I turned slightly, and our eyes met in the half-light. The world outside was chaos, but in that moment, the only storm I felt was inside me. And as I stood there, her hand still on my arm, I realized one truth I could no longer deny. This was no longer just about protection. It was about something far more dangerous, something I was already too deep in to escape. The power came back within minutes, but the effect of that brief darkness lingered long after the lights returned. Alexandra pulled her hand back quickly, almost as if she had forgotten she was holding on to me. She gave a small, polite smile, the kind people use to cover a moment that feels too real. But for me, the damage was already done. That touch had broken through every wall I had tried to keep between us. The rest of the evening passed quietly, but my thoughts were anything but. I lay awake in the small room I had been given at the back of the house, listening to the wind outside and replaying the way her eyes had looked in the dim emergency light. There had been no fear in them, no accident in the way she had reached for me. It had felt deliberate, even if she would never admit it. The next morning, she acted as though nothing had happened. She brewed coffee, asked about the weather, and went about her day with her usual calm composure. I followed my routine as well, checking the security system, walking the property, but everything between us felt charged now, like the silence carried more weight than the words we spoke. Over the following days, the closeness grew in subtle ways. We cooked meals together, something she admitted she rarely did back in the city. She laughed more easily, her shoulders relaxing as though the mountain air was finally stripping away her armor. I found myself lingering in the kitchen just to watch her slice vegetables, or staying by the fire longer than necessary so I could hear her talk about the books she loved. But then came the night that blurred the line further. It was late, the fire burning low, when she came to sit across from me in the living room. She wore a simple gray sweater and leggings, her hair loose around her shoulders. She carried a glass of wine, swirling it absently as she looked at me. "Do you ever think about leaving it behind?" she asked suddenly. "Leaving what?" I tilted my head. "The job. The responsibility. The constant need to be on guard." I gave a small laugh, though it came out heavier than I intended. I wouldn't know who I was without it. Her eyes softened. Maybe that's the problem. The words hit me harder than they should have. She had a way of seeing through me, of stripping away the layers I kept hidden. And the truth was she wasn't wrong. You talk like you know something about that, I said carefully. I do. She took a sip of wine, her gaze drifting to the flames. People think I chose this life, charity events, public appearances, constant eyes on me. But sometimes I feel like it chose me. And now, I don't know how to step away. Her vulnerability shook me. For the first time, I saw her not as the woman I was hired to protect, but as a person trapped in her own expectations, much like I was. The silence that followed was thick, heavy with all the things we weren't saying. I wanted to reach across the space, to close the gap, to let her know she wasn't alone. But before I could, the sound of a car engine echoed faintly from outside. I froze instantly, instincts kicking in. No one was supposed to be here. Alexandra stiffened. Who would be driving up here this late? Stay here, I said firmly, already moving toward the door. Through the window, I saw headlights cutting through the trees, growing brighter as the vehicle approached the house. My pulse quickened. The driveway was secured, and only those with clearance should have been able to reach the property. I stepped outside, the cold air biting at my skin. The car, a black SUV, came to a halt a few feet from the porch. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, dressed in a dark coat, his expression unreadable. Evening, he said casually, though there was something calculated in his tone. I'm looking for Miss Hayes. She's not available, I replied firmly. This is private property. He smirked slightly. Tell her Daniel stopped by. She'll know who I am. Before I could respond, Alexandra appeared at the doorway behind me. Her face paled at the sight of him, her grip tightening on the wooden frame. Daniel, you shouldn't be here, she said, her voice low but sharp. The man's smirk widened. I just wanted to talk. You've been ignoring my calls. I stepped between them, my body tense. You need to leave. Now. For a moment his eyes flicked to me, then back to her. You've got company. Interesting. His words carried an edge, but he finally turned and slid back into the SUV. The engine roared, and within seconds, the vehicle was disappearing back down the road. I shut the door firmly, locking it before turning to face Alexandra. Her hands were trembling, her eyes filled with something I had never seen before, fear. Who was that? I asked carefully. She hesitated, her voice unsteady. Someone I used to know. Someone I thought I had left behind. The weight of her words pressed down on me. Whoever Daniel was, he wasn't just some acquaintance. He was a shadow from her past, one that still had power to shake her. I need you to tell me everything, I said gently, though my tone left no room for avoidance. She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. It's not that simple. Then make it simple, I pressed, my chest tightening. Because if he's a threat, I need to know. Her eyes lifted to mine, raw and uncertain. You're asking me to open a door I've kept closed for years. Maybe it's time, I said softly. The room fell into silence again, but this time it wasn't filled with unspoken attraction. It was filled with danger, with the weight of a secret I didn't yet understand. And as I sat across from her, I realized that whatever lay ahead would not only test my ability to protect her, it would test how far I was willing to go for her. I didn't sleep the night Daniel appeared. The mountain house felt different, heavier, as if the storm outside had seeped into its wooden beams. I checked the cameras twice, walked the perimeter, reset every lock. The screens showed nothing but trees swaying in the wind, but the silence inside the house pressed against my chest. Alexandra stayed by the fire until late, the glow outlining her face in a way that revealed both strength and fragility. Near midnight, I carried her tea. She accepted it with both hands, her knuckles pale against the porcelain. I should have told you sooner, she said, eyes on the flames. I kept pretending it was over. Then tell me now, I urged gently. She inhaled as though pulling courage from the smoke. Daniel wasn't a lover. He was an investor. Years ago, when I started my foundation, he offered help. The contracts looked generous. Too generous. By the time I realized what I'd signed, he had leverage, control hidden in fine print. When I resisted, he tried to bury me. Whispers, threats, pressure no one could trace back to him. Her words were steady, but her fingers trembled as she set the cup down. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I finally cut the last tie. He doesn't take rejection well. And now, showing up here, he wants me to remember that he can still find me." I leaned forward, my voice calm but firm. "From this point on, you don't answer the door. Any call, any message from him, you forward it to me. If he's a threat, we treat him as one." She studied me with eyes that glistened in the firelight. "It's been a long time since I let anyone stand between me and the storm." "Maybe you shouldn't have to anymore," I replied. Her gaze lingered, heavy and searching. For a moment, the house shrank around us, the silence speaking louder than either of us dared. Then she broke it with a whisper, "You should get some rest." But sleep came only in fragments. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw the headlights in the trees. Each time I woke, I checked the monitors again. By dawn, the frost had glazed the deck in silver, and the mountain sky stretched pale and indifferent above the pines. I brewed coffee and found her in the study, already awake, hair pulled back loosely, glasses perched on her nose. She looked less like the untouchable figure the world saw and more like someone real, tired, human, and breathtakingly present. "I need to go into town," I told her. "Supplies. A backup phone. It will take a couple of hours." Her eyes lifted from the papers. "Is it safe?" "It will be. I'll change routes, stay alert. Keep the doors locked until I'm back." She hesitated, then said softly, "Come back." The words settled into me like a promise I had no intention of breaking. The drive into town was quiet, the road twisting through fog that clung to the ridges. I kept my head low, my stops brief. Batteries, motion sensors, a prepaid SIM card, a satellite phone. On a back street, I met a contact who owed me a favor. He handed me a small GPS tracker without questions. Trust, the rare kind, still existed in small places. When I returned, the house stood silent among the trees, its windows glinting against the pale afternoon. I installed the sensors along the north ridge, tested the thermal camera, and adjusted the driveway beam to ignore deer. The work steadied me. Inside, Alexandra had made soup. We ate in the kitchen, steam rising between us. She pushed her spoon aside and looked at me with a weight I couldn't ignore. "I hate that he's dragged you into this," she said. "I hired you to keep me safe, not to carry my mistakes." "This isn't about mistakes," I told her. "Protection means knowing the whole picture. Your past is part of that picture." Her lips pressed together, but her eyes softened. "And what about you? Who protects your cracks?" I froze at the question. No one asked me things like that. I swallowed, choosing the easy truth. "I patch them as I go." "That sounds lonely," she murmured. "It's functional." She leaned forward slightly, her gaze unwavering. "Functional isn't the same as living." Before I could respond, she reached across the counter and placed her hand lightly on mine. Not accidental. Not brief. A choice. The warmth of her touch spread through me with startling force. "Even walls deserve a door," she said. For a moment, I wanted to let myself open. But instinct pulled me back. I slid my hand away, slowly, careful not to hurt her. Her expression flickered with disappointment, but she masked it with a small nod. "I'm sorry," I said. "Keeping you safe has to come first." Her voice was steady, though her eyes betrayed the sting. "I know. But don't pretend I'm the only one here who feels it." That night, fog rolled down the mountain, thick and heavy. I checked the sensors one last time before heading down the hallway. The floor creaked, and when I turned, Alexandra stood in her doorway, wrapped in a sweater, bare feet against the wood. "I keep hearing things," she said. "It's just the fog," I reassured her. "Sound carries strange up here." She nodded, but her eyes held mine. "Will you stay for a minute?" I stepped closer, stopping at the threshold. Her room smelled faintly of cedar and soap. A book lay open on the nightstand. She looked up at me, her voice barely steady. Tell me I'm safe. You're safe, I said, meaning it with everything I had. Her hand rose, trembling slightly, and her fingertips brushed the base of my throat. My breath caught. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of her touch sink into me. For that moment, the world outside didn't exist. Then the satellite phone on the dresser chimed. 2 quick notes. I snatched it up, reading the alert. Thermal ping, North Ridge. 2 signatures. Stationary. My pulse slammed. I looked at her, her hands still hovering in the air. The intimacy between us cracked into urgency. Lock your door, I said firmly. Don't open it for anyone. Her eyes widened. What is it? Could be nothing, I lied. But I'm going to find out. Because sometimes, stationary doesn't mean harmless. Sometimes it means someone is waiting. The satellite phone's alert burned in my hand. 2 thermal signatures. North Ridge. Stationary. The words were simple, clinical, but my gut told me this wasn't random. I grabbed my jacket, my flashlight, and the sidearm I rarely carried inside the house. Alexandra stood frozen in her doorway, still in her sweater, her eyes wide. Stay here, I told her, voice sharp, controlled. I don't want you to go alone, she said. You have to trust me. For a moment she looked like she might argue. Then she nodded, lips pressed together, and closed the door behind her. I waited until I heard the lock click. Outside, the air was icy, fog curling low over the ground. My boots crunched softly against the gravel as I moved toward the North Ridge. The trees loomed tall and dark, their branches weaving a ceiling that blocked out most of the moonlight. My breath came out in thin clouds as I followed the signal on the small tracker. I found them 20 minutes later, 2 heat shapes glowing through the thermal lens. They weren't moving, just crouched near the tree line. I circled wide, silent, my steps careful. When I was close enough, I spoke low and firm. Stand up. Hands where I can see them. The figures startled. 2 men, mid-30s, both dressed in dark jackets. One cursed under his breath, the other raised his hands slowly. Relax, the taller one said. We're just hikers. At midnight, in restricted woods, with no packs? I said coldly. Try again. The shorter one shifted nervously. We didn't mean trouble. I kept the flashlight on them, my weapon at my side but visible. Then you'll leave the way you came. Now. They exchanged glances, then shuffled backward into the fog. I didn't lower my guard until their shapes melted into the trees and disappeared. Even then, unease gnawed at me. Hikers didn't act like that. Hikers didn't know how to freeze their movements, didn't wait silently for hours in the cold. When I returned to the house, Alexandra was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, a blanket still around her shoulders. She rushed toward me the second I stepped inside. What happened? She asked, voice strained. 2 men, I admitted. Claimed to be hikers. They left. Her face paled. Do you think Daniel sent them? I hesitated, then nodded. Yes. At the very least, he wants you unsettled. Her eyes flickered with fear, but beneath it, anger glowed like an ember. He doesn't get to keep controlling me. I admired her fire, but fear still clawed at me. He will keep pushing. He wants to remind you that he has reach, that he can break the walls you build. She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. For a moment, she was silent. Then her voice broke through, low and raw. I'm so tired of running, of hiding. I sat beside her, close enough to feel the tension radiating off her body. You're not alone anymore. I'll make sure of that. Her eyes lifted, meeting mine. The silence that followed wasn't heavy with fear anymore. It was heavy with something else. Something that pulled me closer without permission. You keep saying that, she whispered. That you'll protect me. But who protects you? I swallowed hard. My instinct was to deflect, to laugh it off. But her gaze wouldn't let me. I don't know how to let anyone close enough to try. Her hand slid over mine, warm, deliberate. Maybe it's time you learn. I froze. For once, it wasn't the threat outside that held me hostage. It was the possibility inside. Her fingers tightened slightly, and my defenses cracked open in the quietest of ways. Before I could answer, The wind howled against the windows, rattling the panes. Both of us jumped slightly, nerves raw. I forced a breath and stood, breaking the moment. "I'll double the patrols tonight," I said. "You need rest." She looked at me, disappointment shadowing her expression, but she didn't argue. She stood too, her blanket slipping slightly off her shoulder. "I'll try to sleep," she murmured. That night I barely blinked. I patrolled the halls, checked the cameras, and sat in the kitchen with the satellite phone beside me, waiting for another alert. Nothing came. Yet the weight of what had nearly happened, what had nearly been said, pressed down harder than any outside threat. The next morning, Alexandra found me at the kitchen table, still awake, nursing cold coffee. She touched my shoulder lightly, making me flinch. "You can't keep going without rest," she said softly. "Neither can you," I replied. Her lips curved faintly. "Then maybe we both need to stop pretending we're stronger than we are." For a second, it felt like she might lean down, that her hand on my shoulder might slip into something more. My chest ached with the urge to reach for her, to admit what had been building since the first night. But the satellite phone chimed again. Another alert. This time, the message was sharper: thermal ping, North Ridge. Same location. Same signatures. She stiffened beside me. "They're back." "Or they never left," I said grimly. Her hand was still on my shoulder. I stood slowly, gently removing it. Her eyes searched mine, filled with both fear and something that looked dangerously close to longing. "Be careful," she whispered. "I always am," I said, though we both knew the truth. With her, my caution was unraveling. I left through the back door, fog thick around me, the trees whispering in the wind. My weapon was steady in my hand, but my thoughts weren't. Because while I was trained to face men like Daniel's, nothing in my life had prepared me for Alexandra's touch. And as I stepped into the ridge once again, I knew this wasn't just about protecting her anymore. It was about protecting us, whatever us even meant. The mountain house had become both fortress and prison. For days, Alexandra and I lived in the fragile rhythm of silence broken by sudden alerts, by footsteps I swore I heard in the fog, by shadows that might have been tricks of the mind. Daniel's presence hung over us even when he wasn't there. But something else grew just as strong. The pull between us, impossible to deny. It all came to a breaking point on the last night. We were sitting by the fire, the storm outside pounding against the windows. I had checked the cameras, reset the sensors, but my gut told me danger was closer than ever. Alexandra sat across from me, a book open but unread in her lap. Her eyes kept flicking to mine, restless, as though she was waiting for something neither of us dared to say. "I can't keep living like this," she said suddenly, her voice trembling. "Always looking over my shoulder. Always afraid of what he'll do next." "You won't," I told her. "Not as long as I'm here." But she shook her head. "It's not just him I'm afraid of. It's me. Afraid of what I want. Afraid of letting myself need someone." The words cut through me more than any threat outside could. My chest tightened, and I leaned forward, unable to hold back any longer. "You think I don't feel the same? Every time you look at me, I have to fight not to cross the line. But Alexandra, I don't know how much longer I can keep fighting it." The silence that followed was electric. She set the book aside and stood, walking slowly around the table until she was standing right in front of me. Her hand reached down, brushing against mine, tentative at first, then firm. "You don't have to fight it," she said softly. Before I could answer, a crash echoed from outside. Glass shattered near the back porch. I was on my feet instantly, pulling her behind me, my weapon raised. The sensors lit up, showing movement, multiple signatures. My heart slammed. "Stay here," I ordered, my voice sharp. "No," she said firmly, her hand gripping my arm. "Not this time. I won't hide." There was no time to argue. The back door creaked as someone tried the handle. I aimed, ready, but then the sound retreated, retreating footsteps, crunching through the snow. Whoever it was, they weren't here to finish anything tonight. They just wanted us to know they could reach us. The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, I lowered my weapon, my body shaking with adrenaline. Alexandra's hands still clung to my arm, her nails pressing lightly through the fabric. "They'll keep coming," I said, my voice rough, "until we stop them." She turned me to face her, her eyes fierce, her breath quick. "Then stop pretending we're only fighting them. You've been fighting this, just as much." I swallowed hard, the truth hitting me like a wave. Because once I cross that line, there's no going back. "Maybe I don't want to go back," she whispered. The storm raged outside, but in that moment the only sound I heard was the pounding of my heart. I cupped her face in my hands, finally letting the wall between us fall. Our lips met, desperate and certain, a collision of fear, relief, and everything we had held back for too long. The kiss deepened, and for the first time, the house didn't feel like a cage. It felt like sanctuary. When we finally pulled apart, her forehead rested against mine. "Whatever comes," she said, breathless, "we face it together." I nodded, my chest aching with both love and resolve. Together. The days that followed were not easy. Daniel's shadow remained, but now it wasn't hers to carry alone. We made plans, took steps to expose him, to reclaim the freedom he had stolen. But in the quiet moments, over coffee in the morning, by the fire at night, something had changed. The fear was still there, but so was something stronger. Looking back now, I realized the mountain house was never just a hiding place. It was where I stopped being a wall and learned how to open a door. It was where she stopped running from herself and let someone in. And it was where we discovered that love, even born in secrecy and danger, can be the most powerful protection of all. So I ask you, listening to my story, how many times have you kept the door shut out of fear? How many moments have you let pass because you were too afraid to reach for what you truly wanted? Love doesn't wait for perfect circumstances. It waits for courage. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications. Because stories like this remind us that even in the darkest places, love can find a way to burn bright.